Welcome to Neighborhood Game Club. I'm your host, Frank Howley. Today we have a special guest, Alex Preston, the director of Hyper Light Drifter, a beautiful neon anime-inspired action RPG available now on Steam and coming soon to consoles. We'll discuss his production process, his design philosophy, the strength of visual storytelling. We'll check out his game collection, talk about 16-bit RPGs, and more. It's a spoiler-free discussion, so if you haven't played the game yet, you can still listen and enjoy. The only thing we will spoil is the ending of The Sopranos' Road to Respect. We'll find out what happened to Tony Soprano and Christopher, what's up with James Gandolfini, see who makes it, who doesn't, all that and more. Bada bing, bada boom.
Alex Preston. I'm the creator of Hyper Light Drifter and Heart Machine, and this is my games collection.
Super Nintendo, you have Earthbound in there, you have Nintendo, a lot of Nintendo consoles.
Yeah.
Is Nintendo your favorite, or?
I guess. I mean, they're kind of the most. I mean, I have a lot of things in here, too.
Oh, nice.
Xboxes and PlayStations.
Dreamcasts. Xbox One. It's very rare.
Super rare these days. So I have multiple copies of Tony Hawk.
Yeah, so Tony Hawk 3 is one of my all-time favorite games.
It's a great game.
Are you on the same wave as me? Are you just Tony Hawk fan?
It's an all-time great. I think we want to collect every possible iteration of Tony Hawk, whether it's like whatever console it came out on. Just have an entire complete collection of Tony Hawk for every console.
So original Nintendo games, you have Ninja Gaiden, Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, Cobra Triangle. What's Cobra Triangle?
Whoa, you don't know what Cobra Triangle is? You should probably leave my house. Cobra Triangle was made by Rare back in the day, and it's your little speedboat, and it's like a 3/4 view, and you shoot stuff, you blow up bad guys, and you hit logs on waterfalls, and you fight sea dragons. It's pretty great.
Well, there you go. Then you have some Super Nintendo games.
Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, got some Mario World, Final Fantasy 3. Yoshi's Island, Star Fox. I had more, but I lent them to a friend.
Yeah, do you have a lot of N64 games?
I'm a big N64 fan. That was like my jam. The Super Nintendo was my jam also, but the N64 is like a magical time. It's that perfect time where I was still kind of a kid, like enough of a kid, but enough of an adult that I could start to understand the machinations behind video games and still be fascinated by and engrossed in the world, but then also like as thinking about it as a developer as well. So it's like, ooh, Zelda 64, I'm gonna be sick for 3 weeks from school while I play this game.
What are some of your favorite N64 games?
I mean, Zelda. Ocarina of Time, just like everybody. I'll say something controversial. I'll say the Banjo-Kazooie games were better games than Mario 64 overall. Not that mechanically that they were. They improved on the formula in a lot of ways, but Mario 64, of course, was the originator of that stuff. So.
And you have that game complete in box. You have Mario 64.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Of course. Sin and Punishment, that's a great one. What else I got here? Well, Bomberman Hero for great music, not so much for great gameplay.
Pokemon.
So this game, I wish it was so much better than it was because Yoshi's Tetris Attack, which was what I forget what it was called in Japan, but they like shoehorned in the Tetris IP onto it and Yoshi for some reason. It was something entirely different, like Magical Girls in Japan. But Tetris Attack is one of my favorite games of all time because it's such a fast-paced puzzle action game. This is a derivation of that, and it's badly done. It's just like the garbage version of it because it's like, oh, let's slap the Pokemon IP on this and then have like the worst voices of all time, and then we'll only do like one voice pass from the janitor, and it'll be good. It'll be great. Don't worry about it. This is a fucking great game because it's made by Treasure, and I wish Treasure cared about making video games.
They don't even have like a port of that or a sequel of that.
No, they got.
I love.
That's all you get. That's all you get is that one game. I don't even think they made any other games for N64 except. Oh no, they made Sin and Punishment. So, Tetris Fear, fucking great game.
You got all the N64 Tetris.
Of course, my dog's name is Tetris. Tetris is like my favorite series. Donkey Kong 64, which is also a garbage game. Fucking peanut guns. Are you kidding me? This is a controversial one. This is probably in my top 3 favorite N64 games of all time. But I know people that fucking hate this game. But I love this game to death because it's an adventure racing game, which is so for excuse the pun, rare. You don't get those very much. And something fascinating about like having a boss battle while you're racing, and also the music. Music is fucking classic. It's so happy and great. I don't know. Anybody who doesn't like it, whatever. Go eat it. Go eat a butt. I got Justin's copy of Star Fox 64. Nice. I don't know who Justin is. Snowboard Kids, also great. A fucking great game. Severely underrated. Tried to play it again recently. It's a little rough, but man, it was fun back in the day. And then 1080.
Very cool. No Glover?
Oh, fuck Glover. Fucking circus glove. Okay. Still one of the greatest racing games of all time. Still highly playable. Still, like, the only thing that matches it is F-Zero GX. That's it. There's nothing else that even comes close. Rush 2049. Fucking amazing multiplayer mode where it's just slamming into each other and do crazy, stupid tricks. Only reason I own that game. Beetle Adventure Racing. Also an adventure racing game. That's the title. And then Wave Race 64. Which is a fucking amazing game. You can tell I like racing games.
Yeah,
and Tetris
you have a pretty deep, solid N64 collection.
I could have more. I'm always looking for more. So.
Oh, nice. The sleeves.
I hate boxes.
Shenmue, legit.
Yeah, Dragon Force, Guardian Heroes. Some Saturn games. I gave my Saturn away. Let's see what else I got in here.
Oh, nice.
Got all my Wii games. Those are pretty great. Yeah, I hate boxes, so I went to, because they just take up too much room, and I have too many games to put them in boxes. What else do I got?
Do you toss your boxes, or do you keep them in storage?
No, I keep them in a box.
Okay, nice.
So the GameCube is also a really deeply underrated console. There's some amazing classics on that thing. Not this thing. Mega Man X Collection was a bad excuse for a collection. Kirby's Air Ride's great.
Super Monkey Ball, I love it.
Fucking great game, just for that one multiplayer thing. Also one of the best games ever made. This game is also deeply underrated because nobody had multiple GBAs and link cables, but it's great. The multiplayer mode in that, the battle mode, it's so much fun. Mario Sunshine, people hate it, people love it. I don't know, I'm kind of in the middle on it. Paper Mario, Thousand Year Door, one of the greatest. And then
Beautiful Joe.
Beautiful Joe, Pikmin, Metroid Prime, also one of the greats. Metroid Prime 2 sucks. And then Super Mario Galaxy 2. And then here's all my handhelds. This is this guy.
Oh, wow.
The old SNK, the Neo Geo Pocket. Man, this little control stick, so satisfying.
Do you have a lot of games for that?
I have like 7 games for it, and I think there's only like 15 games for it or something, so I have most of the games for it. Yeah, a couple of Vitas, because it's an amazing console. Couple of DSs, different versions. Pink DS, and then a DSi.
You also have a Hyperlight plushie or a toy?
It's a little plushie. So one of my teammates, Casey, his sister made, I don't know, like 25 of these or something by hand and sold them on Etsy at the beginning of the campaign as like a super limited run. So she made one for me, and it was really great, but unfortunately I lost control of it, and he didn't get the greatest care that he deserved.
But now he's safe. He's protected.
His remnants are. I mean, he's missing his skirt and his belt, so.
Awesome. All right, well, you have a great game collection. You have a great Terminator 2 poster. Terminator 1, I apologize.
Yeah, it's the Terminator.
All right, and now we're going to talk about Alex's video games, his Hyperlight Drifter, everything else. A lot of Nintendo, his Dog Tetris. Let's do it. All right, welcome to the podcast portion of Neighborhood Game Club. I'm here with Alex Preston, the director, designer of Hyperlight Drifter. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Stunning introduction. Game collection's great, a lot of Nintendo stuff. You're the first director I've had on the show, someone within the industry. I've had a journalist and stuff before, so I'm excited after so much talking about playing video games, how we play them, to actually get the insider's perspective.
Sure.
So before we get into your amazing game, I want to know about your early history with video games. What were some of your earliest game systems?
We had a Atari 2600 that I didn't really understand yet because I was too young. But, you know, I'd watch my dad play a little bit. First one that I remembered that I actually, like, really focused in on was my Nintendo system. or well, the family Nintendo system. But I would primarily watch my brother play it. So I wasn't good enough. I would play, and I would get a chance to play, but mostly I was there watching my brother play because he was far better than me.
Yeah. Were there any specific NES games that you really gravitated towards when you were just a kid?
I think most kids, I was a Super Mario Brothers kid, so Super Mario Brothers 3 in particular was my jam. And then the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games.
Yeah.
Even though they were kind of subpar ports of the arcade games, but still, it's like that's as good as you're gonna get when you're in that era. So, yeah, TMNT was so good back then.
So I know with like Hyper Light Drifter, Zelda's a huge influence. At a young age, did you play Legend of Zelda? Were you able to understand it, or was it until Link to the Past did you really get into Zelda?
Yeah, the original Zelda, again, that was something I watched my brother play a little bit, or a lot, and I didn't quite get it. And then we'd play Zelda 2 at like one of my parents' friends' house, because they'd be hanging out playing cards or doing whatever sexy things they're doing in the other room that kids are not allowed to see. And we were sequestered off. It's like, yeah, fuck yeah, we want to go play some video games. And so he had Zelda 2, and it's like, oh, I had a bit of a more clear understanding of what that game was because of the side-scrolling nature of it.
Oh, yeah,
some reason. I think as a kid it was easier to comprehend that. And attached to that in a way, but even Link to the Past, my brother bought that at a certain point in the SNES lifespan, a little later on, and I don't know, I wasn't super into it at first. I'd watch him play. It wasn't until I touched it like a year or two later that it struck me like how fucking brilliant that game was. It's like, okay, now I get it.
Yeah, so like Nintendo, my brother had it, but I didn't really touch it. And again, I'm a little bit younger, so Super Nintendo was the first system I gravitated towards. But even with Link to the Past, I was too young to get it. I'd see like older kids play it, and then when it came out on Game Boy Advance, like a port of it later, that's when I was like, okay, now
that's
I can
the
get
bad
this.
version
I
though,
know.
because he has a stupid voice in it.
Oh,
his
yeah,
hair's
yeah.
no longer pink.
And then when they I finally played it when they ported it on like Wii U Virtual Console, and then that was like when I finally like played it on my own and really got into Zelda.
Yeah, I mean it's still hard to argue with that being such a nearly flawless game. So it's pretty great.
Yeah. So there's Link to the Past. With Super Nintendo, what are some of your favorite games of that era? Specifically towards more like JRPGs, because I know there's such a strong influence with Hyper Light Drifter.
Sure.
All the Square games and everything, Final Fantasies.
Yeah, I mean, FF6 is their best work. They kind of peaked at Super Mario RPG. I would argue that Super Mario RPG is the greatest game on the SNES, and definitely Square's greatest achievement. I think that I was listening to something or reading some article, like they had a program at Squaresoft years ago. I don't know when this was, but they'd kind of lost their RPG mojo because they were just making like bad Final Fantasy games or like really derivative stuff or just like really complicated, annoying things that people were. I mean, they'd still sell a lot, but it didn't have like the heart and soul that the old SNES games did. And so they would have people, like new employees, sit down and play Super Mario RPG for the week and then come back with notes like, why was this such a good game? Like, what did you learn from it? And also, what would you change? And some jerks were like, oh, I just put more tutorial text in there. It's like, get out, you're fired. You're fired. No, Super Mario RPG was, oh man, that's such a good game. I think Chrono Trigger was everybody's favorite.
Yeah, Chrono Trigger is one of my favorites.
Because again, that was like the dream team from Squaresoft, where they got all the great creators together and just like this amazing set of creative people to make this fantastic thing that it was better in almost every way than all their other achievements, just because of the nature of like, I don't know, they just had such a great vision and followed through on like every single aspect of it with that game. So
yeah, I mean, like the story of that game is great. Also, the multiple like hypothetical like endings you can get on multiple
13
playthroughs.
endings
yeah.
or something like that.
The combat I think is really cool for it being an art like almost turn-based RPGs where you're still within the game map, so everything is tangible. Like you see an enemy, you can go up to it.
That was what I liked about it the most was. As a kid, I fucking hated turn-based combat.
Yeah.
So Link to the Past was such a great release for me. It's like, ooh, this is action game done right. But as the older I got, I started understanding. I mean, I loved FF6. even despite like the intense random encounters.
Yeah.
And the turn-based combat I ended up really starting to enjoy at a point, but I think it was mostly just the random encounters that did it for me, that just like really screwed it up. And that's why Mario RPG and Chrono Trigger, like they sequestered that off into its own corner, like get it out of here.
Yeah.
No more random encounters. Like, oh, perfect, cool. Now you got like good turn-based combat and no more random encounters, and you do it in world, at least in Chrono Trigger, which was really fascinating at the time.
Mm-hmm. And then I've yet to play Secret of Mana. That's something like several friends have recommended to me, but I've heard that's a huge influence also.
Secret of Mana. Ooh. So yeah, it is. The first one, about like a year and a half ago during production of Hyperlight, we sat down at lunch one day, and Teddy has a copy of Secret of Mana. He brought it in and was like, cool, let's play it. Let's see how it holds up. And man, that game does not hold up anymore. That is a clunky fucking game. So if you want to see how clunky action games were that weren't Zelda back then, go play Secret of Mana. But there's fascinating things about it. It's kind of ugly, it's kind of clunky, but it's big and it's inspiring, and the music's great. I mean, the story's pretty interesting still. It's just like, oof, that combat's pretty rough. But nobody in America officially played Seiken Densetsu 3, which was Secret of Mana 2 or whatever, because it was never released here. But wow, that game, it's less clunky than the first Secret of Mana. And the tile set in that, like the sprite work in that, is probably Square's best work they've ever done. Like it blows. Like even now, just looking at it, I'm like, wow, that game is fucking gorgeous. So.
And then there's like sequels to Secret of Mana. Isn't there like Legend of Mana and all these other? Are any of them as worth playing, or is it all just?
No, they're worth playing. I mean, Legend of Mana is really interesting because it has hand-drawn backgrounds.
Oh, nice.
Like every single background is hand-drawn. It's like a painting. So it's incredibly gorgeous. But the gameplay is a little tedious, and I don't know, the treasure hunting is not so interesting. So it falls flat in certain gameplay respects. But man, is that game beautiful! And again, like try hand drawing every single background of a game. Like that's crazy. I mean, I kind of did that, so I know how crazy that can be.
I mean, that's something I find really charming when I go back to play older games. Is I just love pixel art and the animation. Sure. I find it so charming. Whereas today, a lot of games. Like specifically why I like your game and then a lot of these older throwback games is so bright and colorful. Like there's so much going on. Whereas now, along with a lot of like AAA games, is this just gray palette. Everything is so monochrome and.
I think things have shifted. I think that was true of like the 360 generation.
Yeah.
Where because everybody's using Unreal.
Yeah.
And that was Gears of War, and it was hard to really modify that engine a whole lot, and so they had to use a lot of the same kinds of shaders and filters and basic textures and whatever else, and like it's like, it's a shooter, cool, whatever. We want to be realistic and gritty. There's a certain aesthetic going with that stuff, so I don't know, nowadays, this generation, like you see a lot more. I mean, even look at Killzone, which is like historically a fucking grimy ass gray-brown shooter. And the PS4, like Killzone 4, I think it's Killzone 4, that came out a couple of years ago. Like they put colors in it.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, right, colors. We forgot about those.
And then like with the infamous Second Son, that game had really bright, vivid colors.
Well, there's a whole power called neons.
Yeah, so like that was great. But like, yeah. So going back to Super Nintendo, another game that some people have cited as an influence is Super Metroid. Again, another just great pixel art, the exploration of it.
People have decided this.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Is like that's why I love.
I mean, it is. But.
Yeah. But like on you see like on Steam and like Reddit, it's like, oh, I can see like that's people just use these easy go tos.
Sure, I mean it's an easy go to for me. Like Super Metroid is probably the biggest influence for my game overall, just because that was the Super Nintendo game that struck me the hardest out of any, like had the most impact on me. Specifically because of its atmosphere. Yeah. Like no other game that I had played before that made me feel so isolated and made me feel so much like this, just like a sense of deep dread going into it. So that blew me away when I was younger. I was like, wow, there's no other game like this. Nobody else is at this level with like atmospheric tone. Like there's plenty of great action games, great shooting games, and platforming that's better in other games. But I don't know, man. Like Super Metroid is amazing in many ways, but I think its shining achievement is the atmosphere and the mood that it created that no other game was really doing at the time. Certainly not at that level. So that thing, yeah, that had a lot of impact on me, and there's definitely a lot of influence on Hyperlight.
So another thing I read about in doing research for Hyper Light Drifter is this game has a lot of personal aspects in it. A lot of I read that your company Heart Machine derives from your own personal history with heart disorder.
Yeah.
Could you tell me about how that played into this?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've had a broken heart my whole life because my wife in the womb broke up with me. No, I was born with a congenital. Congenital means you're born with it. 2 holes in my heart. It's called tetralogy of flow, for the fancy term. But basically it just means that you have a malformed heart. So that leads to all sorts of problems throughout your life. Shortened lifespan, can't do as much as everybody else. You're at risk, at greater risk for pretty much everything heart related. And I had to have a valve replaced in November, a few months ago. That was a fun thing to do. I had open heart surgery when I was a baby to patch me up, and then I had a pacemaker jammed into me when I was, I was like 20 something, I don't know, back in like 2007. So, and I will have more things done to me because I have, like every 10 years I have to get a new pacemaker, and every 10 years I probably have to get a new valve. So, there's fun things that come along with that kind of a problem. So.
And so you're constantly in and out of hospitals, and is there a lot of downtime?
Not constantly. I was more because of a lot of other health issues as well. I just have a garbage body, so it's a flaming trash heap. So it's a number of things that have put me in and out of the hospital over the years. The heart thing is just kind of like a regular thing that I know will be a constant and I have to address. But then there's other issues that come with my immune system and my guts and all sorts of other fun diseases. So there's a host of issues, and I want to go live in virtual reality and forget about this body.
Well, yeah, because video games are empowering. You're able to escape. That's why I mostly spend my time with movies, but more and more I'm spending more time with video games because I feel like that's like the ultimate escapism.
Sure.
It's so easy just to put a game in and just worry about those problems in that game. Like I have to defeat this objective or tick these boxes, and it's very easy to escape. What compelled you to become a video game designer? How did you get into this whole medium?
As a kid, I was always fascinated by video games, and I always had a deep creative drive. So it made a lot of sense at a certain point, probably in junior high or high school, started experimenting with that stuff. But it never really went anywhere because I'd always find the wrong people to work with. Mm-hmm. And I'm the type that's motivated by others better than I am on my own. And so I need somebody to bounce ideas off of. Yeah. And I need somebody to work with because then that drives me to be a better creator. Drives me to be smarter and more efficient about things and to want to impress. Whereas if I'm just working on my own, it's like I can get things done, but it's not nearly as enjoyable. So finally, though, I was able to find Bo back in 2013 to work on Hyperlight with. And he was prototyping stuff based on my direction, and we were working together on a bunch of different ideas, and it was great. But everything up until then was just it's like a side project or some dumb thing that I did, or I tried to make an RTS when I was in high school, running on my shitty 386 and editing text files for each level. It was just dumb stuff that never really went anywhere. Before that, the only semi-serious endeavor I had in games was with a friend trying to make an iOS puzzle game, but man, the App Store is such a disaster. And then puzzle games of all things on an iOS. For an iOS app, it's way to go to the most ultra saturated market possible. So that didn't pan out either because she was just a bit too busy, and I needed people around me that were as motivated as I was that I could work with, rather than being a lonely man in his underwear in his room doing things by himself.
Yeah. Is there a pretty like prominent indie game scene here in LA? Because I know there's Glitch City LA. I'm not too familiar with that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of indie developers here in LA. So Glitch City, I co-founded that with 7 other people back in, oh gosh, that was like early 2013, before I started making a serious effort into Hyperlight. Because I had a bunch of friends, like they would come over, we'd hang out, we'd be playing board games every week. We'd talk about, my roommate Casey and I would talk about like, man, we need like a shared office space just to do creative fun things, because again, much like myself, most independent developers, they get lonely like working in their bedroom or working in their house. It's like they want to go to a place where they can talk to other people, bounce ideas off of, even if they're not on the team, and just like be around other people, because we're social creatures. So we were doing that in our garage for a while, just having like art nights is what we were calling it, because we just sit there and draw or like do whatever creative thing you want to come here to do. And then finally we just said, screw it, let's get a bunch of people together, pay up front rent for a year in a commercial space, like put this together and just all sit down and work here. So it's become like a nice bastion for other independent developers in Los Angeles, and I don't know, it's a great working space to just hang out with friendly people. It's not exactly open to the public, but it's open to other developers. It's not like there's other like working spaces that you pay for. You're like, I'm gonna go work in a cubicle for a little while. No, this is like hey, if you're a creative type, especially if you're a games developer, then maybe come hang out. But yeah, in Los Angeles, there's so many people here. Like so many fucking people in this giant city.
Yeah.
So of course there's tons of talented developers out here. And there's, like Riot, who's hired every developer in the world, but like they're all working on their own projects too. So, there's a super vibrant indie scene out here in Los Angeles.
Cool. What other games have come out of Glitch City LA? Are there still things in development?
There's a bunch of stuff in development. The most recent thing, besides Hyperlight, was Irrational Exuberance, which was in the Steam VR deal that went up last week.
Oh, awesome.
There's just like a little preview of the game. It's Ben Vance. He's been working on that for a while. And then Donut County, Benjamin Esposito, he's been working on that for a couple of years. That's coming out soon. And Brendan Chung, Blendo Games, who's made a shitload of games. Quadrilateral Cowboy is the most recent one that's coming out pretty soon. I did 30 Flights of Lovin', which is also a super great game. Yeah, he's a crazy man. He's very prolific in his creative efforts. So, yeah, there's tons of stuff coming out all the time. Everyone's pretty productive. So
that's awesome. So I know you with you guys use Kickstarter to kind of jumpstart it. Is making an independent game easier than ever before using? I know there's Game Maker Studio. There's all kinds of free software like this. Is it still easy to make a game without getting a ton of funding? Is it a very open space to make things, just the internet?
Yeah, tools have been democratized these days for making games and just making anything, really. The power of the computer and the power of the internet is just like, it's pretty much limitless at this point, what you can do. Even 10 years ago, you didn't have this tool set available.
Yeah.
And you certainly didn't have the access to like Sony or Microsoft or like big stores like Steam. You saw that change pretty heavily once iOS came out and they opened up the App Store to everybody. It's like they opened the floodgates and everybody followed suit in a certain fashion because they saw how lucrative it was. And now you see Sony embracing indie games in a way that you didn't see last generation.
Yeah.
Microsoft did in a certain way with their like Summer Arcade stuff and all that, and that's where like Fez and Super Meat Boy, they all premiered on those, and that was great. But then something happened in Microsoft, and now Sony's kind of taken up that mantle for the indie devs. And I don't know, like Microsoft's a big organization, so people shuffle around.
Yeah.
But like Chris Charla's over at Xbox, ID at Xbox, really pushing hard to get that program as best as it can be. So they're doing a good job. But like it's crazy. Your Xbox One can be a dev kit now.
Yeah.
That was not possible like at any time in the past. And the best you could hope for back when I was in high school was like, oh yeah, I could release like a shareware, shovelware, freeware, whatever thing on the PC, or like I could get on Newgrounds with my Flash game.
That's the only experience
like,
I have.
Oh, fucking Flash games, man. Like, yeah, there's some good stuff that's come from it.
Yeah,
like,
but then also like with the Behemoth, like Tom Pope and Dan Paladin, like from there they created.
Of course, listen, I played a lot of Flash games, and the Behemoth dudes are great, and I love all their games, but like Flash is not great for like pixel art, and it's not great for the things that I wanted to do. It was just not my style of program to make games in, and so like I was trying like RPG Maker. It was like the next best thing that I could get, but even that was really limited and really flawed because it wasn't made to be like a robust open-ended games engine to like tweak and to your heart's content. Is like we're very specifically making JRPGs in this, and that's pretty much all you can make in this. I don't know about now. I'm pretty sure they've opened it up quite a bit in the most recent versions, but yeah, like I mean, you have Unity. Like everyone and their mother is using Unity for good reason, because it's a super open platform, because you have a store where everyone's making everything, and so there's assets available. There's like shaders. There's all sorts of cool stuff with physics and like anything that you could think of that you really want to play around with. It's like cool. There's something up on the store, whether like it's free or somebody is asking you to pay for it. Like there's a module for that you can get, and you can just play with stuff endlessly in games engines now, and it's crazy the amount of access that we have. Like that you just even 5 years ago you didn't have this stuff. You know, it's pretty rad.
That's awesome. So now getting into Hyperlight Drifter, how long has this like the seed of this idea been with you? Do you remember when it first came to you?
I mean, there wasn't like a aha moment or anything like that. It's kind of just like an amalgamation of things that I've wanted to do since I was a kid. I think every creative type has ideas in their minds rummaging around for years and years, and they like build off of it or like spin off certain parts of it. They think about what they want to make. I think about what I want to make for quite a while before I actually make it. Sometimes that changes over the years, and sometimes that idea takes shape into something that's very crystal clear. And Hyperlight was one of those things where it's like, okay, after about a year or two of like doodling things and kind of getting designs down and really thinking about what I wanted to do with this game, I finally sat down and started screwing around with Game Maker, because it's like the most accessible thing for me to make a 2D game. And then Bo came along because he was a Game Maker professional. Like he's been using that thing since he was young, for like a decade, so he like knows it inside and out. We're able to prototype stuff really quickly, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, the idea behind any game, it's like maybe I can't speak for everybody, but it seems like nothing just pops into your mind overnight for a video game. And like maybe you have like a flashing sign of brilliance or whatever, like a light bulb in your head for a specific part of a game that can be a driving force, but like for the whole creation, it's just like, I want this part in there. This is what I like about games, and this is what I don't like about games. And let me make something that is all the things that I like and none of the things that I don't like.
Yeah. Was there any, I know like we talked about the video games, was there any specifically film or anime that inspired it? Because one thing that immediately hooked me on this game, I mean the art style, but when I bought it, started playing it, that opening sequence, there's so many things I read from it. There's, just from me playing it, there's visual cues to Akira with the giant explosion that looks just like, Neo Tokyo exploding. It reminds me of like Studio Ghibli work, like Nausicaa, the giant gods, Evangelion, like the way the Titans are designed. And so immediately saw this, I was like, hell yeah, I'm in. So any deeper, anything, any of those like particularly that grabbed you, or are you a fan?
Yeah, I mean, you named all those things. They're definitely big inspirations.
Yeah.
I mean, Ghibli stuff is some of my favorite films to watch, and even the earlier stuff when Miyazaki was doing like Future Boy Conan, or even like Lupin the Third, like that stuff's always been incredibly well animated, and the ideas behind them, there's like a certain levity and nuance, but then there's a lot of serious behind like the lessons that they're trying to teach, or the things that are at least not even trying to teach, just the things they're trying to say and express. Whereas, you know, when you look at a lot of Disney movies and stuff like that, it's like they're slamming you over the head with a lesson. Like, oh, this is it. This is the moral of the story. And I don't know, like Ghibli stuff, it's just, there's a lot of gray areas. And there's, again, subtlety, which is such a critical and great thing. And there's always like an air of magic to their worlds that they create. And it's brilliant. And Nausicaa in particular really caught me off guard when I first watched it, just because there was nothing else really like it at the time. Where it's like doing these crazy, it's a very brutal and horrible world in many ways, but you find solace. Yeah. And you find like this warmth there with the community that they've created, and then everything's fucked, and it's like ripped apart, and it's just like, oh man, you're playing with me here, and it's hard.
Well, that's great. Yeah, so everything you kind of talk about Ghibli, I feel that with your video game. So real fast, people watching this who don't know what Hyper Light Drifter is already, quickly, can you just tell them what that game is?
It is a video game.
There you go.
Go watch a Let's Play video, I guess. I don't know. It's an overhead action RPG. It's got pixel art, even though plenty of people are like, fuck you, pixel art. Yeah, you kill stuff in it. You explore. You're sick. I don't have a great pitch anymore. It's like,
you've been talking.
I've been talking. It's like, it's its own game.
Yeah,
it's its own thing. It's the closest analog is like Link to the Past, but even that's not accurate. Mm-hmm. So.
So this game is great. It's on Steam. It's coming to other consoles summer into the year.
Summerish.
Cool.
Soon. As soon as possible.
And so there's no spoilers, but like my impressions playing it. One thing I love, you talk about subtlety. I love that this game is purely visual storytelling. One of my favorite details is like you talked about, this is the world of chaos. It's but in the middle there's this heart. There's this little town of all these survivors, and I love as you're finding survivors throughout the game, they have these little bubbles over their head that they'll tell you a story in like 3 frames, and I love it because it allows you to imagine all these tales that are happening. And so I'd find someone, I'd watch their little clip, and then I would replay it a few times and like really get it. And like I feel like that's something you haven't seen so much before. I mean, like with like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, you have all these like little things that allude to things like that. But it was just great seeing it in this game.
Yeah.
And
those were a pain in the ass. But we stuck with our guns on it because I don't know. I had the idea to just do. Well, early on, like we decided as a team, like we're not going to do any text in this game. And like the first meeting that we had, we're just like, all right, well, we have numbers and we have these other things, and there's some ideas about what we're doing with the story. But then we're just like, why don't we just not have any text at all? Why don't we just not have numbers? Why don't we just not have anything like that? And that was a really difficult decision to stick to because, boy, designing a complicated game without any of those tools, like you have to think of other clever ways to express this stuff.
Yeah.
And that was some of the most challenging design to get over, especially when it comes to UI, when you're trying to express numbers and value, or when you're trying to express values in the UI. Holy shit, I wanted to blow my brains out some days doing UI design. It's just like, ugh. And it's still not perfect, but it's like, we got it to a point where it's like, cool, it communicates, that's great. As far as the story stuff goes, like the little panels, I mean, I was doing a lot of illustration for commercials and stuff, freelance, back in the day, and I was doing a lot of storyboarding, so it made a perfect sense for me. Like we were already thumbnailing out ideas for what we wanted the story to be. Like we were writing a lot, but we were also thumbnailing, and it's like, why don't we just use these thumbnails? Why don't we just use these and actually make them the story parts? Like we can communicate and express everything that we need, and people can glean whatever they want from it. And if they don't get it, that's fine. Yeah. But if they do, it's like they will, if they pay attention and they really want to look at it, they can. And there's a lot of detail in some of those too. And that kind of, for me at least, like, I don't know, having done storyboards so much, like it made a lot of sense to do that kind of stuff for the storytelling proper when it comes to NPC interaction instead of just like a block of text, which granted would have been a million times easier. But maybe not as interesting.
No,
definitely not as unique.
Yeah, it's a brilliant note that like it just helps with the world building, and then like also too as you're exploring, the game's exploration is amazing, but like you'll explore something and you'll see something in the background, and then later, as you go deeper, you'll see that much closer.
Yeah.
Like specifically, like when you're in the north area, you see this Titan who's like decayed and frozen off this mountain, and it's like, oh, it's amazing. I loved it. And then another part in the game where you go in and there's all these like this lizard camp, and you walk in and they all scuttle away, and just these little details of animation. Like I went back and forth just admiring it. Like it's special, and I really like it.
The scuttling lizard animation is one of my favorite things in the game. Sean did that. He just popped that out.
Oh, it's all
in a day, and it's like, oh yeah, that's fucking great.
And
again, little box on the head. It's so good.
Yeah, and there's so much to uncover with this game. I mean, because I played through it once, I did the core of it, but there's so much you can explore. There's keys to collect, there's all the modules, all the gear bits, and it's amazing seeing the community come up from this of just people detailing all these huge maps and finding secrets.
They blew through that in 4 days. I was like, yeah, okay. We got some secrets in there. It'll take a little while, right? It's like, no. Everything. Even the outfits where I was like, yeah, we won't say anything about that. They're like, oh, we got a guide for what all the outfits do, what all the gear does. I'm like, well, all right. And that was in the first 5 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had maps with every single thing on them. They had decipher. I mean, granted, the language thing, the cipher that I had originally for the language was way more complicated, which means that it's going to be way more complicated for me to actually write it out.
Yeah.
So I had to simplify it quite a bit because it's just time constraints. And I'm like, that's one thing that I wish I had done was really encrypt the hell out of that thing. The lesson that I've learned is the internet will find everything out in 3 days.
Yeah.
And unless it's ridiculous, Fez had that crazy, super crazy puzzle that I don't even know. I think they did. It took them a year or something, or it took them quite a while to figure that one out. But even Dark Souls 3, that game's not even out here. And they've already detailed every fucking part of that game in the first week of it being out. I'm just like, dude, there's no secrets on the internet anymore.
Yeah.
That stuff will and somebody just pieced together the story as best they could based on actually observing all the things, watching the cutscenes over and over, looking at all these little details. We put a lot of storytelling in the world itself and static little vignettes and whatever. And they were pretty accurate in some respects. And that was in the first 3 days. They're just yep, this is everything that I think is going on in the story. And I'm like, all right, I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
it's not perfect, but it's there's a lot of things in there that are yeah, okay, you got that for sure.
And yeah, as artists, I love your ambiguity that you put in this game, and I like that people are debating well, this is what I think this is game. I don't think this is so literal, and people discussing it in a positive way that engages the player with.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's your interpretation of it, and for me, that kind of storytelling, it makes it more personal when the player can absorb it and personalize it, digest it, and just be like, okay, this is what I think about this. And it is up for debate. Some of the stuff is intentionally very ambiguous so that you can make your own decisions on that stuff. But other things are pretty explicit. It's just that the way that it's presented, it doesn't seem that explicit because you have to pay attention, you have to focus. And I think we ask a lot of the player in certain regards, especially when it comes to storytelling, and certain people miss that, and you see that when people get mad at it or review it or whatever else, there's not a lot of story, or it's so flat, or it's boring, I don't get what's going on here. And some very legitimately maybe the story doesn't do it for them, that's totally fine. But then again, I see that other harsh end of the spectrum where it's there's no story here, and it's well, there's actually a lot of story here. We're just asking you to do some work to digest it, to actually observe and maybe process this rather than just spitting it out in text or doing a voiceover or something else. So, certain players get it, certain don't, and that's fine. It's whatever you take from the experience.
Yeah.
And we knew that going up front, that people have different play styles, people have different ways of interacting with games, because that's how it is, and whatever you take from it is whatever you take from it. And I can't slight people for being for not processing it in the ways that we're necessarily asking, because there's certain games that people love that I don't love, and it's just I don't know, I don't get it. I don't get why people play Dota a lot. I'm just I've put 80 hours into that game and it's still not fun for me. And people are no, you can put 100 and then it gets fun. It's no, I don't want to do that. But I don't begrudge them for it. It's just like, it's not for me, and I don't get it, and so that's fine.
When it comes to like video games, especially compared to like a film, if you're a director of a film, you make your movie, and there's so many battles you have, but once it's out, that's it. You might do a director's cut down the line, padded footage, or if you fought with the studio, but for the most part, that's the finished product. With a video game, you've spent years making this, and then it's out, and now you get trillion people playing it in different ways, breaking it, bugs.
Sure.
And you want to patch, make sure it runs well. But then once you have those kind of bugs fixes and patches, how much further do you go in like polishing your game? Do you want, as a director, is everything in the game there that you wanted to be there in a reasonable level? Is there things you want to keep changing? Where do you kind of draw the line?
I think you got to draw the line somewhere, otherwise you're going to be working on this endlessly. For us, we just want it to work on as many systems as possible, as best as it can. So in the past couple weeks since we've released, or the past like week and some odd days since we've released, like we've been doing patches to alleviate problems on like different configurations, because when you release a PC game, Mac game, even Linux game, like there's so many different configurations out there that even though we went through QA and they tested on like a dozen odd configurations, like that's not enough. Like you can't capture all the problems that you might get. Like people have different software installed, antivirus, different drivers that don't update, like their fucking like things are corrupted, and I'm just like troubleshooting all this stuff, or just like our game doesn't run well on this specific configuration. Why is that? And then we have to dig deep and troubleshoot that stuff and be like, okay, well, maybe somebody can tell us exactly what their specs are and what the like steps to reproduce this stuff. And so there's a certain point where you got to stop doing that, just because we have to move on. But for the most part, I think like the first few weeks / month after you release on PC and Mac or on this platform, I think you have to be ready to patch stuff. And patch it as best and quickly as you can to respond to feedback, because we want to have a good showing the first month. And overall, it's been good, but we've had like pretty big problems on Mac because Game Maker is a limited engine, and we're just like working with, again, a lot of different configurations, and we're a small team, so we're reacting as quickly as possible. And then Windows side, there's like certain bugs that we just missed, or like dumb little things like, oh, this piece of scenery is foreground instead of background, or it's like not laying on the floor. It's because the other thing too is like we're a small team, we're making a really big game, especially for our size. Like, there's things that either just like won't function perfectly for everybody, or that we just straight up missed because like, oh shit, we didn't play it that way, and somebody else like, there's like the speedrunners that are breaking things and that stuff. I love to watch that. Speedrunning is some of my favorite stuff to watch. But again, for our game, is particularly fascinating because there's like these entire skips that they can go past bosses. And certain ones are like really clever and really hard to do. I'm like, cool, let's keep that in because I never thought about that. But then other ones like, oh, there's like this weird bug with, I don't know, like the crystals in the West. They do some crazy shit with like our basic collision system. So they can do some pretty crazy skips with it. I'm like, maybe we need to fix that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It's different than a console release, where you have one piece of hardware, like one SKU, that you're releasing for, and you can always reproduce a bug. Whereas on the PC or Mac or whatever, Mac is a little more limited just because it's like, they only make these types of Macs, but still there's like different OSs for Mac. There's still like different chipsets for Mac because people have Intel Macs, or they have Retina displays, or they have the old IBM chipsets, or whatever else. They have like, even just software can cause a lot of problems and wreak havoc. It's like, oh, you have like 5 different audio devices installed, and now your game shoots out static at me. It's like, I can't account for that. I don't know. I don't have every piece of software in the world, so it's like we just have to take it as it comes. And then on the Windows side, especially, where you have so much software and you have so many different configurations that are like radically different in some cases. For the most part, it's like you're all on x86 and you're all running Windows as whatever, it's pretty much the same. DirectX isn't really going to change that much, but there's different interactions on this video card, and then this generation of video card has weird drivers, and then it does this to our game. Or like, I have no idea why our game is running badly on your system and it runs perfectly fine on this other person's system. Like, do you have background processes going that are eating up
Yeah.
CPU cycles. I don't know. I can't troubleshoot. I'm not on your computer. So it's like I do my best to respond to stuff as quickly as possible and like get as much information as possible to make sure we're doing everything that we can to respond to bugs and make sure that it's on our end, like we fix it. But if it's on the player's end, it's like, well, all we can do is put up a forum post and be like, hey, if you're having these problems, these are the solutions to it. If it's on our end, give us feedback and we will fix it internally. But it's like, yeah, you're going to find bugs. We're going to patch it. And we're going to keep doing that until, I don't know, till it's at a state where it's stable, everyone can play it who wants to play it, and there aren't crazy crash bugs. There's still going to be weird little oddities, because in every game there's always bugs forever.
And then when you have to port it to PS4 and Xbox One, does a different group handle that, or is that just a whole new cycle of finding bug fixes?
Well, we'll have some different people helping out on that. But yeah, it's PS4 and Xbox One. Luckily, again, like they're fairly similar in their hardware.
Yeah.
And again, you don't have like a lot of different software pieces of software running on those OSs. So you don't have like crazy random thing I downloaded from the internet that destroys your game.
Yeah.
It's like, no, a PS4 is a PS4 and an Xbox One is an Xbox One. So it's like infinitely easier to just be like, cool, here's a bug on the Xbox. I can reproduce it. I can fix it. I will never have to worry about that again because it will never pop up again because I fixed it for the Xbox. Same thing for the PS4. It's like I fixed it for that. It'll never pop up again because nobody has a different configuration. But yeah, I guess the biggest lesson learned from releasing on multiple platforms, especially on the PC side, is like just be prepared and maybe only release on like PC first.
Yeah, stagger
and
it.
then Mac and then Linux and worry about that stuff because it's like, oh, I'm just getting a flood of like on Arch Linux it's not working this way, and it's like we didn't say we support that, but it kind of works on that, and it's like, and then on Mac side it's like, oh well, on my Retina display it does this differently and it doesn't scale here, and then on Windows side, it's like of course, it's the craziest because again, like there's so many different configurations. Like the craziest one is, or one of the crazier ones is like people have different size monitors. Those like 21:9 ratio with like the really widescreen ones. Those are cool. People are like, oh, can you put support in for like 21:9 so you can stretch? No, that's like an entirely different game.
Yeah.
I can't do that. Like we made the game 16:9. Like that's what it does. And like, I love your monitor, but it's like I can't support all this stuff. We're like 4 dudes making this stuff.
Outside of kind of like bugs like that, I have a question about one thing I see a lot people bring up is difficulty.
Sure.
The combat in this game is great. It's not like hack and slash, like a beat 'em up or anything. It's deliberate, but I didn't find it like too difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's definitely a clear like way that you wanted to make it. But how do you gauge the right difficulty level? Because someone who's making the game has been with it for so many years. They know it, how to counter everything and things like that. But at the same time, there's different levels of experience of someone coming into this game. Someone who's like barely played any video games, they'll find it difficult. Like, who do you listen to? Do you trust your instinct? Do you play test it? Do you get feedback from PAX? Where do you try to find the sweet spot?
There's a lot of iteration and a lot of play testing. Because when you're sitting so close to something, it's almost impossible to tell at a certain point, like, how difficult is our game?
Yeah.
Because you become a professional player of your own game. I mean, there's ways to judge it, and there's intuition, and there's like, yeah, okay, I can intuit that to a degree, but the best case is always going to be getting feedback from and just observing other people playing your game. So yeah, we've been to a couple of PAXs and other shows, E3, whatever else, and we were hosting internal play tests every other week for a long time. For like the last year, we were doing that pretty much back-to-back play tests because, again, that's the best way. It's like, as soon as you remove yourself, because like, I would be deep into level design and enemy combat encounters, or like a boss design, and as soon as you pull back and stop playing it yourself and watch somebody else do it and they do something completely different, you're like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And so, like, I know the exact path, like prime path down this level and each enemy that's going to crop up. So I can't trick myself into not knowing that stuff.
Yeah.
I can play test it enough to be like, cool, this is what I want, and this is how I want to see it react, and this is how I want to play out, and I know the shape and general formation of this level, but then I immediately have to get feedback, like whether it's from the team, from somebody who hasn't played it yet, or somebody like in the studio from Glitch that hasn't played it yet. And it's like, because as soon as you sit back and watch somebody else play, you're like, oh, I've learned a thing because I was so deep in it. Like they immediately walked off that edge and I didn't want them to do it. And let me put a wall there.
Oh, nice.
Or like they fell off that thing and that was dumb design on my part. I didn't even think about that. So yeah, there's plenty of variables. It's like you just can't think of everything. So when it comes to difficulty especially, it's like get as much feedback as possible. And then you also have to admit to yourself, we had to admit to ourselves, like, who are we making this game for? You know, that's a hard question to answer sometimes, but I think sometime about a year ago, we're like, yeah, you know, certain people aren't going to like this game because it's going to be too hard for them.
Yeah. And
we want to make a challenging game, so we have to accept that fact. For the most part, people have understood that, and I think they get that it's actually, you know, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
There are certain spikes here and there, but for the most part, we gradually, it's like gradations of difficulty, and we usually build to a specific thing, especially when it comes to the bosses. Like, you're going to learn a few things on the way.
Yeah.
You have the opportunity to get skills to make the game a lot easier for yourself. It's like, it requires, again, we ask, I think when it comes to difficulty specifically in our game, it's not so much that the like raw skill required is high, although it is higher than plenty of other games. It's more that we ask you to sit and observe, and well, not sit and observe, but just like actually observe like enemy attack patterns, observe how things are functioning in this specific room, observe the room for like little secrets and tells, because everything's got a tell. And then for the boss encounters, which, you know, some people fucking hate them because they're like, oh, fuck that bird boss. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, I could see that. But really, once you observe his pattern and you start to understand this and observe the systems behind him and behind you and your own systems, like how your gun and your sword work together in tandem, the dude's a fucking breeze. You know, it's like boom, boom, boom. You can take him out. Granted, again, like I'm a professional at this game after like 2.5 years of making it, but still, like I've seen other players and plenty of other people online are just like, yeah, I took out these bosses like after one or two blind tries. It's like, cool. I'm glad that there are people that can do that, and I'm sure they have a higher skill threshold than others. But even those with like a lower, like, oh, okay, I'm gonna fuck up, or I'm not gonna be as good as dashing or whatever else. Like, it just takes a little bit of observation, being careful about stuff. You can't just rush in and wail on everything. Russian whale. Yeah. You can't just rush in and then like wail and hope to button mash and succeed. It takes a bit of tactical thinking. Yeah. And again, like caution, because you're a glass cannon and you're gonna shatter if you get trapped in something pretty quickly. So yeah, I don't know. Balancing it's just a lot of iteration and a lot of playtesting. That's the best way to get real feedback on your game.
So the short answer, will there be an easy difficulty mode?
That's not a short answer. The question?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's enough people out there that have asked about that I'm actually considering, like, yeah, maybe we could do an easy mode where it's like we give you some extra health, like recharge like more health kits or something, reduce boss health or something like that. It wouldn't be that hard to make an easy mode. We'd have to play test some stuff and make sure it actually functioned. It would take some extra time. I don't know. It's kind of like there's something about that doesn't rub me and some of the other people on the team the right way. It's like this odd compromise on your vision where you're like, this is the game. This is the game that we want to show players. And in fact, we have a really hard mode if you want to get even better at it and have like a real challenge here. Because we, at this point, don't think the main game is that challenging. It's just like, yeah, your first time playing, for the vast majority of people, it's going to be a very challenging thing. But I don't know, like something about having an easy mode. And I know this has been a discussion before online, like even in the Dark Souls community. Where there was, like, I think Miyazaki, the director over there from Software, was talking about he's like, yeah, I could see putting an easy mode in one of the Souls games or something. And people like flipped their shit about that. And they're like, no, I don't want, like, this is our game, like, you can't do that. And to a degree, I can see that. It's like it's kind of compromising the vision and like integrity of that. But I also see the flip side of like, well, then you're just making it more inclusive, and you don't have to play that mode.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you never have to touch it. Your accomplishments in the game are not diminished because we said, oh look, somebody else can beat the game too. They're very obviously in this easy mode, and maybe they wouldn't get all the achievements either. It's like you segregate the achievements out to like if you're playing the easy mode, like you're there to enjoy the game. And you're not there to like struggle, but I don't know. That's what the game's about.
Yeah,
it's about a deep struggle on a lot of different levels, and whether it's with the mechanics and the player and the story that we're telling and like the very personal relationship I have with that stuff. It's like that's part of the vision of it. So I don't know. I'm still weighing like, do we want an easy mode? Do we not? I don't.
And
could be. I don't know.
The funny thing is like right now in the middle of the Steam release, when you have like the PS4, Xbox One release, it'll be launched out even more mainstream. You'll have this whole thing ignited again.
Sure.
And but yeah, that's.
But that's also a different audience too.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm not saying like console players are worse than PC players because Souls games came out on consoles first.
Yeah.
And people were super into that, but I don't know. I'm thinking about it still.
Yeah.
It's a hard question to answer, really.
Just have a few more quick questions, if that's cool.
Sure.
Thank you again for your time. So a few quick more questions before we wrap it up. I think the main reason I bought this game, one was the neon art style, but two is Disaster Piece. Like I liked him as a chiptune artist when he was making just music, but now he's composing stuff. It Follows was one of my favorite films last year, and so
I hated that film.
Oh, really?
His soundtrack is great.
Yeah. Oh,
but that film is.
I love it. Like I'm a huge film geek. Just everything they were doing, I loved. But so I love that soundtrack, and then he did it again here. Awesome soundtrack. How did you come into contact with him?
So I had a friend or an acquaintance, Roger, and he knew Disaster Piece because he had done like I don't know some live shows with him or drum work with him, and I was like, hey, can you put me in contact? Give me his email so I can show him my pitch on this game. And he did, and I sent it to him, and Rich was like, cool, looks good, I'm in.
Awesome.
So that was pretty much it.
Well,
yeah,
great.
Pretty straightforward.
No, that's great. Yeah, again, love the soundtrack, and it helped pull me in, and now I'm a huge fan and champion of it.
He did a lot of work on the ambiences also in the game to make it really fleshed out. So he did a fucking amazing job, as I had always dreamed and known he would.
Yeah.
So, soundtrack is super good. When it comes out, even though I've been listening to it for 2 years, I will listen to it more.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting his full release.
Yeah, he's in the process of mastering it, so a couple more days and it'll be out.
Now that your game is out and your baby's out in the wild, what's been like the best satisfaction you've had as a creator?
Certainly not releasing the game because we're still fixing stuff.
Yeah.
We're still responding to feedback. And like I still have much to do because we have the ports for the consoles coming up, and then all this Kickstarter stuff. Like that was a brief release for like a night.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the next day comes, it's like, oh shit, we got a lot of work to do. So that wasn't like the greatest. It wasn't like, yes, we're finally out. It's like, oh boy, here we go. Got more to do. So I would say actually it's pretty recently there was, I don't know if this was the greatest moment, but it was really, really nice where there was this Let's Play video, and there was a guy. Oh gosh, I forget his name, but he's got a good amount of followers, so I'm sure he's doing fine. Sorry, I can't remember your name off the top of my head, but I shared it with the team too, and everybody's like, yes. It was such a good video because he was learning how the dash mechanic worked. Because he had gone out and got enough of the gear bits to complete a few chips and then buy the dash upgrade. He's like really trying to decide between it, and he got to the chain dash. And we have that little arena in there that you can test it out. And it's like you could see every step, and he was verbalizing it really well. And he seemed like such a sweet dude too. I was like, oh, this dude, I just want to hug him. But every time he figured out like, I don't, like, he would look at the thing, he'd go back to the arena and try it out, look at the thing, go back to the arena, and he's like, but you can do two? You can do two in a row now? There's a three? And he'd do like two, and then three, and he's like, oh, oh, you could do 4. Oh, I did 5. And then like you could see every step where he's figuring it out. He's like, oh, you can do more.
Yeah.
And then he'd figure, and you're so excited and like rooting him on, like, yes, do it, do
awesome.
it. And then he finally figured out like, oh, this meter adds up, and like, oh, you have to do like, you have to do 100 of these, and he did it, and it was so like every step of it is like, oh man, this guy, like I want to just give him a high five every time he figures like all these great like little bits about it out, and like. And then he finally did the 800 dash challenge, which
I haven't done that.
So many people fucking hate that.
I haven't done that.
I had to talk Teddy down because like he put that in there at like 1,000. Mm-hmm. It's like, dude, we got to cut this in half. People are gonna rage on this.
Yeah.
So he's like, how about 800? And it's like,
it's like people have made like scripted programs where you.
Yeah. So like I'm still tempted to like bring that down in some way, but I also don't want to diminish other people.
No, I think keep it there just so people can be proud of like.
Right, like
yeah.
Good fucking job. That is like that was a hard challenge even for us to do, but still like he did it, and I was like I gave a little cheer when he finally did it. I was like, oh man, that's so good. It was so satisfying just to watch him learn how everything functioned, and really satisfying as a creator to know that we did something in this game well enough that people can figure it out.
Yeah.
Like we set it up in a way where like cool, they learned the lessons that they were supposed to. And that's like the most satisfying video that I've seen so far on. It's like, man, cool. We did that. We did that and he learned and he got it. There was no words involved. Like he fucking got it and it's like, so, like yes. Just cheering him on like, do it, yeah. Fuck yeah. Good job, man. Good job. I tweeted at him later. I was like, hey man, this is a fucking great video. Good job.
That's awesome. A conversation I've had on the show a lot is with my friends is like, we kind of grown up playing video games and now this whole new concept of like Twitch streaming and Let's Plays is like that's like the most dominating form of games media. Do you still feel satisfaction when knowing that there are people who will experience your game by just watching someone play through it? At the same time, your game is getting more exposure, but do you kind of feel a loss that they aren't personally playing it themselves?
I don't know, like, Let's Play stuff and Twitch streaming is so ingrained in games now. Mm-hmm. You just have to take that into account. And I think... Ooh, excuse me. I think certain people... No, I have the hiccups.
It's okay.
I think if they really want to play it, they'll go out and buy it or pirate it, which is, not ideal. But if they're just going to watch it and enjoy it that way, at least they know about it. And I think there's a certain conversion too, like if enough people watch it, there are going to be people that will be like convinced to buy it. So I think Let's Plays and live streams are great for spreading the word and great for like building some momentum for the game. But I also think it can hurt certain games that are just like very intimate experiences.
Yeah.
You saw that with like that Dragon Cancer, where it's like, I don't know. That's an interactive experience that you should be playing without watching a video on it, because it's very personal, and it's very, again, intimate, and that kind of spoils it when you have a Let's Play of it, because it's super linear and it's meant for that. It's meant but for our game, I think there's enough in it where it's like, yeah, you can watch people die a lot, and it's fun to do that stuff. You can watch people beat one of the bosses for strategies and whatever else, and that's great. So depends on the game, and I think for the majority of games, Let's Play and all that stuff has been fantastic, and I fucking love watching speedruns. I like, that's my favorite thing, is just watching people break down a game.
I do like that part, yeah.
It's fascinating how quickly that, even just in our game, I was waiting, I was going to be like, yeah, in like 6 months we'll have some speedruns. But in the first 5 days we had speedruns already, and somebody beat it in like 35 minutes. I was like, how did they fucking do that? And it's like, oh, they skipped this part by doing that. And it's like, you wouldn't know that unless you had a community sharing videos and sharing ideas and like showing each other how they did things. And so it can foster this great community behind your game once you're sharing all this content. And so on one hand, while it's like, maybe you should experience a story for yourself because you'll feel more invested in it, and there are very like spoilery and personal things and effects in there that it's like I want you to play this, and I built this game for you to play it. I didn't build it for streaming. It's not a movie. It's not like something that that is going to be shown in a theater or whatever, but it can play out well that way anyway. So it's a balance. It's like I hope enough people that watched on Let's Plays and whatever else are not satisfied enough with that and are like, I want to get this into my own hands and actually beat it myself.
Yeah.
And maybe they're missing certain parts or whatever else. So I don't know. It's like it goes both ways, I think, with a lot of modern video sites. It's like it can be a really positive thing for your game and building a community, and it could also take a very special experience away from somebody if they're just watching somebody else play it rather than they themselves doing that, because again, you interpret games differently, or like you find your own challenges and frustrations. Like maybe they wouldn't have beaten the bird boss in the same way that they watched this other player do it. So I just hope that if you enjoy the game enough and you're watching it on YouTube or Twitch, it's like you're gonna go out and buy and play it and experience it for yourself, because that's why I made the game, is for people to play it and experience it, because that interactive component is something that you don't get from video and film, and that's specifically why I love games so much, because I don't know, it's such a weird and like esoteric thing, the interactive, and it's so satisfying.
Well, yeah, you get this level of triumph once you've, like, every time I beat a boss in your game, it was like, hell yeah, I did that. Whereas you're watching a movie, you're just sitting there like, okay.
Right.
Yeah, but like...
that sense of accomplishment.
And like personal achievement.
And you can get absorbed in this world in a way where it's like you're controlling this character, you become part of this world, whereas just watching a video of somebody else play it isn't the same thing. Like, again, I watch plenty of Let's Play videos. I have nothing against them. I think they're great. I hope that if you like a game enough, and I try and do the same thing, like if I like a game enough and I'm watching a Let's Play video, I will say like, I want that experience personally, because that's going to be a different thing than just watching it. And so, yeah, I think there's enough there that it can work both ways, where it's enjoyable to live stream, it's enjoyable to watch people die over and over again, but it's also enjoyable to play yourself if you want a challenge.
Well, if you're watching this or listening to it, please buy Hyper Light Drifter. It's a great game. It's on Steam, Mac version also, and it's coming to PS4, Xbox One, Vita. You're doing Vita?
We're doing Vita at some point.
That's great. That's such a neglected little boy.
I love that console.
Awesome. Quick question I asked a lot of people is, what's your go-to like gaming site or for news? I honestly just use NeoGaf. I feel like that's just clean.
I never got a NeoGaf account.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
I was rejected.
I love NeoGaf. But is there any place for good game journalism or just industry stuff?
I just like aggregate news.
Yeah.
So it's like whatever's coming in from Kotaku and I don't know, Polygon and RPS and even IGN or whatever else, like GameSpot. Mostly I listen to podcasts. Like I listen to Giant Bomb.
Giant Bomb. I listen to Giant Bomb. Anything else you listen to?
Giant Bomb East. Beastcast.
Yeah, Beastcast. There you go. They plugged to you.
Yeah. I mean, I fucking love Giant Bomb. Those guys are rad. I get my news from everywhere. I don't like, this is the first thing I'm gonna look at. It's like I'm obsessive, so I'll look at like fucking every games site.
Yeah,
so.
and there's like people I follow on Twitter and stuff like that.
Right.
And then like I subscribe to specific subreddits.
I mean, when the reviews dropped, when the embargo for Dark Souls 3 dropped, it's like it got like 17 tweets of like all the various sites that I follow. Like, here's a review, like right running low. It's like I follow everything. I'm not like, oh yeah, you go IGN or you go Polygon or whatever. So no, there's certain writers that I really love to read, but for the most part, it's like I will follow everything everywhere because I need to absorb that news.
Yeah. That's great.
I need information.
I asked like the viewers like several episodes ago, but yeah, if you're watching this again or if you haven't commented before, what news site do you use? Because I just want to soak it up all too.
Yeah.
I need to know everything about video games, and that's my quest.
Yeah, Giant Bomb is the most fun. Just a podcast to listen to, and they give a lot of great information and talk about food.
Yeah, and wrestling.
And dumb stuff.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Alex, thank you so much for your time. I know you've got busy months ahead of you.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's a great game. Enjoyed it. Thank you for doing Neighborhood Game Club. Send in emails. I'll have more guests, and we'll talk more about vid games. Any final words?
No, I think I'm good.
All right, there you go. Hyper Light Drifter, Neighborhood Game Club, the collaboration of a lifetime. Bye!